So,
Okay, I'll call a meeting of the Morrow County Commission to order, and we'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so before we're gonna have an introduction here, so everybody knows who it is, but thank you all for coming, and I'll just go over quickly how we're gonna do the meeting is, we're gonna have a presentation by our administrator, Matt Benson. And then we're going to take comments from the audience, and it'll be a question answer period or just comments. And then we will have, we'll also take questions online if there's anybody that wants to, or make a statement. Okay. This isn't really a hearing, it's more of a town hall or open question answer series. Period. Okay, we'll start with introduction. Madam, let everybody know.
Yes. Matt Jensen, County Administrator.
Valerie Ballard, Executive Assistant.
Phil Gutierrez, DLR Group, Architecture, Engineering, Design Team.
Kelly Stewart, DLR Group.
Doug Carl, Alliance, Project Management.
Roy Drago, Morrow County Commission.
Okay, Sonics Morrow County Commission.
Jeff Winhouse, Morrow County Commissioner.
Okay, so we're gonna do the presentation, and I ask that you wait, there is a public comment after that, so wait until we get done with the presentation, and then we'll start on the public comment, so I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Sykes asked me to give kind of a primer to recall how we got here. Most of you are here in Hefner. You probably understand it, so forgive me for retreading some things. The glorious old historic courthouse right there it was built in 1903. And as such, it's a great building. We love it. It is a icon for Hefner, and it's photographed quite a bit. But unfortunately, it does not meet the needs of current judicial systems and the requirements that are there. Back in 1903, you'd have a circuit judge who'd come riding around and hold court, and that was it. Now we've got technology, security issues, just the jury rooms and those other things that are a challenge for it. As we look at that, previous Board of Commissioners started working on what do we do? There's use issues on there, and I will allow recording. And there was a study done about 3 to 4 years ago that took a look at how to revamp the courthouse. As it looked at it, there was 3 or 4 options that were provided using the existing building, adding on, and they just didn't work. From there, it just still led to some challenges. From there, the state, realizing that many counties have problems with their circuit courts and with these historic buildings not meeting modern requirements, started to explore providing funding and helping the counties to build new circuit court buildings that could meet the modern needs of the justice system. And Morrow County was able to apply for that. The previous Board of Commissioners were involved, as well as the current one. Members of the current one, as they went up to Salem, testified and secured funding with the help of Judge Dan Hill in the 6th Circuit. And we were actually on the first cycle of funding. This funding is not a grant per se, it's actually just capital funding that they take a bond out for. And the caveat on this is they specifically stated that it is for new construction, not remodeling or reconfiguring older historic buildings. They want new construction, so it's built on providing space and not retrofitting for structural deficiencies in that. One of the challenges on this, while the state did provide at the final award to the county is $12.75 million. That's to cover up to 50% of the cost of the building. They will cover the costs only that are directly attributed to the court, And while it is wise to have supporting roles there that are impacted by the court, whether it's consolidating the justice court there, having the district attorney office nearby, having facilities for juvenile justice to be there so they can have a comfortable space while those minors are before they take up and have to testify and such. So those are some of the challenges there. The understanding from the get-go was, whether it's under our Board of Commissioners or the previous one, was that Oregon state law said it had to be in Hefner, and that was interpreted as within the city limits of Hefner. When there was a committee formed by the previous Board of Commissioners that started and then kind of got put on the side once a recall initiative came through. Once the current Board of Commissioners came in, that was one of their issues that they wanted to prioritize, and they've started going through. They worked with the city of Hefner on identifying, from the list, they came up with 9 different sites within Hefner that could be done. The challenges is you have certain parameters in the court that are required. You need a certain amount of size, you need a certain amount of parking, you need a certain amount of secured access that makes using some of the existing buildings not work. And as it went through, they went down to 4 sites, and then chose the fairground site as an opportune location to not only have space that the county owns, but within the city limits and with access that they could take care of. With that, there was a couple town halls held on that location. There was issues with the impacts of the fairgrounds that we were concerned about, issues with neighbors, impacts on those. And we've tried to work through those. But then we had a curveball thrown at us where the state's Chief Justice interpreted the law as saying it doesn't require it to be in the city of Hefner. It can be anywhere within Morrow County. And with that, the commission asked the design team that we have to kind of take a pause and to look at what other sites are. I would like to share what those initial ones were with the audience. And the 6 sites, as we wanted to look through the different areas of the county. First one is still in Hefner. That was the fairground site, and with the work that we've already put into it and the fact that it's owned, is still a primary consideration. Other sites, one of the ones that came up with the interpretation by the Chief Justice and some coordination with Greg Smith and the Port of Morrow was to have the Port of Morrow provide land free of charge for the use of the circuit court. So that was another location. There's 2 locations in Lexington that were considered. One was the old school building, to purchase that and have it right on the corner, tear that down and build a new courthouse there. The other location in Lexington was across the street from the Public Works building in that field that goes up the hill. Both of those, nice central in the county, but the fact that we have to purchase it, and unfortunately Lexington doesn't have all the infrastructure that Hefner or other people have is a challenge. The 5th site was to utilize a 2-acre lot that the county had originally purchased for the use for a transit center, but due to certain grant restrictions that weren't followed, that's not available. And so we could not use it for the transit center. It is available and could be used. The other location, what we looked at, was up in Oregon. However, there are some statutory requirements that limit having a justice court with the circuit court, and it's a bit of a challenge. And so that site was ruled out. From there, our study that as we reviewed these with the commissioners, they told us to proceed with sites 1 at the fairground, site 2 at the mill site, and Site 5 in Boardman as the preferred sites. They tasked myself and the design team to come up with a study report, some estimated construction costs, and what the impacts would be for changing to those other sites. And so we're going to turn this time over to DLR Group, Kelly and Austin, and Alliance as well as support to review some of those and discuss some of those the pros and cons of those sites and what goes into selecting a circuit court. Before I turn it over to them, anything to add from the commission or anything I didn't cover that you'd like me to? Okay, I will stop the share on that. And we'll get to yours. And I'm using the same one as
Yeah.
earlier. Okay.
Hi, and just a reminder, my name is Kelly Stewart. I'm with the DLR Group. The team that we've been gathered together working with the county has been Doug with Alliance and also Austin here with me at DLR Group, and also our civil engineer. Yes, he's been helping advise on this. The 3 sites that we're going to see tonight is what we most recently narrowed it down to. Look at the next slide. To something I want to share first, since DLR Group's done architecture and engineering on courthouses all over the US and Oregon. And so I first wanted to just share our architectural perspective on this type of building, because most people don't spend very much time in courthouses. So they might just think of them simply as a place where the business of upholding justice is conducted. But there's so much more to that. These are really important civic buildings. It's about the people and their town. And some of the things that we see them as is something a building can actually elevate the surrounding community. They're emblematic of the rigor, fortitude, and fairness of the judicial process. It's a public asset, and it reaffirms to the community that justice is available to all of us. It's also a source of pride. It's a monument representing values, specifically that the community and judicial systems can work together. So we've worked with other counties already evaluating potential locations for their courthouses. So just some of the criteria that we've used across the board on those sites are listed here. Like an ideal location that we would see for a courthouse is that it's centrally located in a community, or what we call a civic node, a node being a place that contains a concentration of already existing amenities and businesses, like a main street, for example. And that's because there's a variety of people who use these buildings. So the staff, jurors, all sorts of court participants, the lawyers and the judges. And so they have the opportunity to go and support the local businesses when they're spending their day in the courthouse. A highly visible location is ideal too, potentially adjacent to other civic functions. Typically, we would be part of some grander plan, like a civic campus, and be adjacent to a city hall potentially. As a civic building, we try to avoid having it be adjacent to any like manufacturing or food processing plants, especially ones that are heavy emitters. And we do typically avoid residential sites, and that's mostly because we know that it's not always welcomed by neighbors, although that's not unprecedented. We have done other courthouses that are across the street from neighborhoods. Some criteria that we've established that's relevant to this particular project. Meeting the Oregon Judicial Department's minimum facility guidelines for suitable and sufficient court facilities. That's the name of an actual published document that tells us what we're required to provide for the courthouse. We want to avoid or mitigate potential site hazards. So one common one for this area is being outside of the flood zone. We want the building to be accessible to the public. And we want it to be able to connect to city provided utilities. And after interviews with various building users, we've put together a program that gave us the next set of data that we need a site that's a minimum of 2 acres of buildable land. And it's got to be able to fit a building that's plus or minus 24,000 square feet and has 123 units. And so the quick high-level Google Earth view of the sites here. There's the fairground site, previously surveyed already, ready for us to proceed with development. Then there's the Inzua Mill site. This site is well over our 2 acre minimum. It's 115 acres or more. There's multiple locations within it for the actual site that we've considered. That's not what we're going to look at tonight. We're just going to keep it as one potential site. The mill site's appeal, though, is contingent on the potential for future development of what's previously been an industrial site, and also an assumption or a hope that putting a courthouse there could be a catalyst for future growth and development of that site. The reality of this, though, is an unknown to us, especially since the Port of Morrow hasn't officially disclosed any intentions or opportunities for development on the site other than the courthouse. There is the Boardman site. This site's very basic. It appears to be ready for some sort of building. There would still be an additional 3-month estimated delay, though, getting back on schedule relative to if we were to go with the fairground site, because this site still requires the surveying that has to be done. So far, though, there's been no reason to suspect any significant obstacles with this site that would be uncovered. But it needs to happen regardless. It's still pushing the cycle out. And then
Sure.
Turn it over to Austin.
Yeah, so revisiting some of our criteria for locating a courthouse, up on the screen is how these sites compare to each other when it comes to items that are not necessarily cost drivers. To start, all sites are located within the flood zone. Outside the flood zone. The fairground site and Boardman site are already owned by the county, and the mill site is owned by the Port of Morrow. The port has indicated a building site that could be given, a building site that could be given to the county for the courthouse, although there have not been negotiations to confirm which portion of the site that would be. The fairground site is less than a half mile to businesses along Main Street, including multiple restaurants, food trucks, a bank, a post office, and some lodging. Both the mill and Boardman sites are 1.5 miles in travel to nearby amenities. And then views. Views are important to us as designers when considering the building user experience. We want to be sensitive to people who might have to go to the courthouse related to traumatic experiences, and views of landscape and nature really help with those scenarios. And then convenient travel time for the majority of the building users. Obviously, that's Boardman. Most of the cases in Morrow County are in the north end. So the other two don't fight it.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, as you look at this, each of these 3 sites is the right site for different reasons. One of them on that bottom one is something that we talk about, access to justice or access to services. And statistically, in 2023, the caseload there, only 20% came from Hefner, Ione, and Lexington. 80% of it came from the north end of the county. And so there are challenges on that. So that's just a consideration. Just wanted to say as we try to weigh in all the different considerations as we go through this.
So some of the significant differentiators between these 3 sites are for the mill site, especially the extent of potential environmental contamination from the milling process and environmental and geotechnical impacts we consider to be unknowns so far. They need to be confirmed via doing surveys. We discussed potentially getting the surveys started on right away to clear up the unknowns, but we decided not to because there are other differentiators, other cost differentiators that impact site selection that we're able to evaluate today rather than waiting the several months for the survey. And so those differentiators we'll look at first. Those are the costs for providing water and sewer utilities to each site. So we call these the known costs. We have an estimate for them today. Sorry if you're not able to read the fine print. So what this shows is to get water to the site, water in blue, there's two options. There's connecting to the city water by putting in the infrastructure all the way to the city. And because this site is so big, that distance cost is related to distance. So that distance could be 1 mile of new pipe or 1.5 miles of new pipe. So that's why we have a range of costs for that one. The other option would be just to provide well water to the site, which is what the other buildings that are already on the site use. For this particular case with that, we're also going to need to do a fire suppression tank and fire pump, and we'll probably also have to do a water treatment system. And so those costs all add up to one cost for a second option, which isn't our recommended option. But it's still on the table. The other one is sewer and ground. Two options there, connecting to the city. Sewer is downhill, so we'll need some sort of like lift station or pressure system. Again, it's between 1 or 1.5 miles, depending on which portion of the site would get selected for the mill site. And then for doing treatment on site as another option that's listed. And then the fairground site and the Boardman site, this is just, we're already good there, it's already included in the base budget. So that would be cost neutral. Then that leaves us with a differentiating cost for the mill site of $1.945 to $2.910 million. And then our unknown costs. So the site costs that we aren't able to know today, because they'll take more time to confirm, are listed as the unknowns here in the red. So for the mill site, depending on the results of a phase 1 geotechnical survey, that could trigger a phase 2 geotechnical survey. And depending on the results of a phase 2 geotechnical survey, soil remediation could be required. And a geotechnical survey needs to be completed beneath each location that could be a potential building site. So we've just roughly estimated that per potential building site, we could, with all of the borings that would need to be done, could be up to $30,000. And so let's just say we want to look at 3 different building sites. We plugged in 90,000 for the sector sites. And because the mill site's really large. And so we probably want to look at least 3 locations, but we could do it concurrently. If that reveals a suitable site, even then, it would still require ground improvements potentially, or it could impact the cost of the building by requiring a VC structural system. Even without knowing these costs, we also can still estimate the time that it will add to the project schedule. We all know time is money. So we can know today that each month of delay results in $100,000 of escalation cost to the project. So we have those tight ends. We have kind of a combination of some scant knowns with the big unknowns. So our total there is at the fairground site. Because of this process, we are 3 months delayed now. So there's $300,000 with the mill site. That totals $690,000 plus the unknowns that I just went over. And then the Boardman site is a little more because it has a survey yet. So there's an additional extra time on top of that in the survey. And then any unknowns that the survey could reveal there. Go to the next slide. The last slide is just totaling up all the known and unknown costs. So the way we ran the exercise on the previous slides comes to an extra $300,000 for the fairground site versus an extra Potentially up to 3.6 million plus unknowns for the mill site. And then an additional 630,000 plus unknown for the board. And so that's the facts that we've been gathering based on everything we've heard, the pros and cons and obstacles and opportunities that we put out for you all today. And hand it back to Matt.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Could you explain exactly what a geotech is drilled down and what are you looking for when you drill? Is that what it is? You drill a hole in the
It's like,
ground? Okay.
yeah, they take a column vertically. I don't know how deep they go. Boring. Yeah.
What they find, 12, 20 feet.
They can study it at different layers to kind of tell the history of the site. They can tell where the groundwater level is, and that could sometimes be an issue. They can tell what kind of soil it is, which instructs the structural engineer how to design the building. It can tell us if the soil was prone to liquefaction in an earthquake, or if it's gonna need stabilizers put in or deeper foundations.
Just so we're clear and ask, that's what taxonomy unknown is. It depends on what you find. If we try to remedy it,
Yes.
then that's going to determine what your unknown cost to remedy it.
Yeah, they come up with a report and they make recommendations for how to remedy it, and then the engineers interpret what that means to the design.
And you said that probably no one thing that could kill the project, but it's depending on how much money you want to spend.
Yeah,
You could remedy
you
it.
can remove all of the soil and bring in new soil.
Any.
Yeah, you can drill.
I just want everybody to know what the process is, to do what it,
We're working on a project right now where the water table is really high and the soil's prone to liquefaction in a high seismic area. And we're gonna have to do piles underground that go down 90 feet in multiple locations. So, yeah.
Okay, did you have anything else to add before we open it up?
Yes, just looking at these, I mean, as I mentioned, each of these sites could be the right one for, is the right answer depending on the way you look at it. The fairground site is one that is in Hefner, keeps it closest to where the traditional courthouse is, and is the cheapest. The Kinsu Mill site is all about potential. That site's been sitting there for over 3 decades without good development, and putting a circuit court there and having the county help get infrastructure up there could be a great community development key. It's expensive, and is it the right space for there? The Boardman site, I know the naysayers will say, why move it up there? There's logistical answers that say this makes sense. However, the emotional and community association of the courthouse being in Hefner is something to be considered. And, and making sure that we have a diversity of services across the county. And so we're laying before you a heavy decision. And we appreciate the residents and stakeholders who've gathered here today, and hopefully to provide some input on what their view of this is.
Okay, so now it's time to open it up for public comment, and I'll just go over the rules real quick so we all know. Each person will get 3 minutes to make a comment or ask a question. And we ask that you state your name and where you're from, what city. And then we ask that you stay on the topics. We're talking about sites and the circuit court building. Be cordial. Don't get personal attacks or anything like that. So that's the way we want to run the meeting. So we'll start with the people in the room, and then we'll go on Zoom. So who wants to lead it off? Anybody? Okay, John.
My name is John Murray, and I'm on the Port of Morrow Commission, and some thoughts were expressed about the Port of Morrow and some of the things. I'm not speaking for the commission, except to say where there's been support for a particular topic. And And the donation of land by the Port Commission, no, it wasn't voted on, but yes, it was a unanimous consent amongst all the commissioners present at the time that they were interested in providing land for the site should it be needed. And also to address or to mention that the Port of Morrow is, and past commissioners and this past commissioners applied for a grant. So there is intent to improve the Kinsey Mill site. And it's in the works. Matter of fact, it's gone out to bid, and we had good interest from people wanting to do the work. It's called floodway mitigation. So the 89 or 80 acres at the mill site that's on the downhill side of the road is floodway or floodplain. Most of it can't be built on, except for a corner that's kind of closest to town and closest to the golf course. There's a $2 million grant from Business Oregon that was secured for doing that work. There's the port has put in $120,000 of engineering for the project. We still have one additional hurdle to go over to get those bids out and getting reflected back in. But there's intent from the Port Commission to move forward with improving that site, just so everybody knows where we're at.
Okay, John, would the port would be willing to kick in on infrastructure on that 3.9 million and 2.6, whatever it was?
Discussion has been had about it being mutually beneficial to have that site developed in conjunction with the city and the county. Has there been discussion on it? No. There hasn't yet. I'm sure it should be brought up, of course. Always topic for discussion.
Because one thing we got to remember too is, like they pointed out, the clock is running. Time is money, so the longer it takes, the more money it takes costs the county, your money. This is county, people that are more county money. So this,
the $2 million grant is out there. Is there a timeline on when that could come available? I know you guess it will or when, but is there a timeline?
As far as expiration of the money, Commissioner?
Yes, so that it needs to be spent before it's.
I don't know the answer to that. I apologize. We have been working towards getting the project started, knowing that there was timeline, but I apologize that I don't know.
yes,
I have a question for John.
could you identify who you are?
I'm Molly Ray. I live here in Hester.
Okay.
So the existing infrastructure that's at the mill site, there was power, there was water, there was sewer there. Is that not feasible? Is it available to tie into to mitigate some cost?
It's my understanding that there's a lot of water at the mill site, none of it's potable, however, where there's one small well that's inadequate for the building that's already there. And so that's an issue. There's no fresh water for drinking. Plenty of water for fire suppression, not a sewer system.
Yes,
John Doherty, city manager, city editor. I think most people in here know me. It has been the city's opinion since before I was on the council and before I took city manager positions that we would like to keep the courthouse within the city limits. So we are for the fairgrounds. I believe that the fairgrounds site was chosen, that we can work with the residents, the homeowners, the neighbors, and the Fair and Rodeo Board to have a smooth transition and a smooth operation. We've come up with different ideas and met with members of the rodeo board on how to address parking issues. And then also, there's been some very mild discussion with the port and some of the county, I think, about possible developments at the mill site for fairgrounds, possibly in the future. And that would have a much larger area available for development than the current fairground site. But the city is in favor of this site, and as the studies show, it is the cheapest site. The utilities are right there. So that is from the city.
thank you. Yes,
Jody Ferguson, Lexington. Thank you for the presentation. I believe the presentation showed us only the financial side of the impact of the courthouse project. Everyone in the county can look at the presentation and clearly see that there is a significant larger cost to placing the courthouse at the mill site. We need to consider the other sides of the project and what the impact can be to round out the whole county. The north end of the county has new housing, Sage Center, BMCC, the Columbia River, Amazon site, lots of employment opportunities, and one of the largest, if not the largest, port in Oregon. I'd say the north end of the county is doing well, and that we need to focus on bringing some equality to the south end of the county. The south end, like the north, has unique factors, like the Blue Mountains, Morrow County Fair and Rodeo, courthouses, and county offices. The industrial ground at the mill site is valuable land that could be developed to bring the south end of the county to a point of being prosperous like the north. This will be no small or inexpensive feat, but we need to start somewhere. The tax abatement from the Amazon sites are to improve many different items throughout the whole county. And this project in Hetner fits the criteria and could be a good visual example of what the county gains from the tax abatements. As she showed in her previous slide, the very first one, all the things that courthouse would look like in our area. I heard county citizens mention that 80% of the court cases are for people from the north end, and it makes more sense to put the courthouse north. I don't believe anyone could ignore that statement, but the reality is that we all travel, and that's just part of living in rural Oregon. If I want to consider education at BMCC, my nearest campus is in Morrow. If I want to consider working at Amazon, I have to commute to Morrow. I think you see my point. I'm not in favor of moving current fairgrounds to the mill site because that would not create more jobs or consistent income to the south end of the county and would be a gross misuse of the land. I also do not favor putting the courthouse at the fairgrounds because, as we mentioned months ago, we don't want the courthouse next to a school or people's properties. I also do not favor putting it in the Boardman location because we need growth opportunities in the South County, which is a good step at making all parts of Morrow County a place people want to live. So please put South Morrow County back on the map.
Okay,
Second that.
anyone else? Rail one.
Sure, Nancy, resident of Morrow, also in the city, local here. The cost analysis for the port site, is that money, that estimate based upon the whole site? Or has it been broken down for a 2-acre parcel, whether it's on the south side or on the north side? Because you're talking about two totally different sites.
That's why the chart showed you a range of costs.
Right.
We don't know what it's on it. So if it's a little closer to town, on that side, we're gonna bring water, sewer a lot less. Business, so would be cheaper.
Right.
If we have to go further, then it will cost more.
Do you have any ideas of siting?
Well, it was talked about just briefly, the site close to the golf course, that corner next to the road with easy access to the highway, a little closer. I mean, but there's also ideas kicked around, excuse me, of taking out the buildings that are right next to the road and building right, where you just pull in right in the courthouse. That's another thought too. It's about a quarter mile further. Yeah. Or even clear at the other end, up by next to the left-hand side of the extension office. That'd be the furthest side. And it's not in a floodway, although it might have things to study.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Terry Gentry, Kevin resident. I just have some general questions. First of all, your documents that were on there, I can't see them. So are they going to be posted in the paper or can we get a copy of
They're
them?
on the website.
On the website.
We can probably get a copy.
Okay, so they're on the website.
Yeah.
Okay. The other couple of questions that I had is, you've already done the geotech surveys in the fairgrounds, and it was cleared except for one little spot. I guess is what I did before. So that's already been done. No,
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Did you address what she just said?
Yeah, our structural engineer looked at it.
it's fine, you know, there wasn't a little spot that I filled it in there, so, okay, so I saw the holes up there. So like what happens at the mill site, if you do those geotech surveys, and you happen to run into hazardous materials, who is responsible? It's like once you find hazardous materials, I understand that they have to be cleaned up. So who has to pay for that cleanup? Is it the county? Is it Port of Morrow? Is it go back to Kinzu? That's a significant cost, is the way I understand hazardous materials. So I have a question about that. And that's probably just my two main questions about the cost and how that could run into more money if you dig a hole and find something.
So the, a great question on the hazardous materials. We know that there are certain areas up on the hill that were used as that, you know, landfills, and in our discussions with the port, we want to avoid those as we consider the mill site. We would have to look at how the transfer of the land was. I'm sure Kinzu's not going to be held reliable, you know, and if and since we don't have an agreement in place, it's something we'd have to discuss and negotiate with the Port of Morrow on how to mitigate those kind of things. There has been some preliminary studies, nothing certified and accepted by the states. We're trying to get those. And quite frankly, some of the areas that the county has talked about are ones that we're thinking are least impacted by some of the surprises that might be. The site that John talked about, you know, the one on the far east, closest to the golf course, that's a nice little build. Might have had wood stacks on it, which can still have issues. The other one up by the DMV and extension on the west side of that, the northwest side, probably not a big issue. Even the storage buildings that John said that we could rip down and build there, where the buildings are might not be. If we dig into the hill behind it, might be. And so those are all. That's one thing we pointed out at the irrigant item, the unknowns in red, because it's unknown and it could be impactful. And so we'd have to work on that. I know on the infrastructure, the Port of Morrow, City of Hefner, and the county would have to come in partnership and figure out some of the solutions. And preliminary discussions is they're all on board if that's the place that needs to be. So we'd have to figure out how we want to check with those hazardous ones.
And so, depending on how things work through, whether the county has to pay to get the water there, or if the city's gonna pay, or if Port of Morrow is gonna pay, those are all benefits as to whose pocket that money comes out of.
Right now, we're anticipating it as an increase to the cost of the project. If anybody has a pot of money waiting around, we'd love to. But you know that we're bringing as much information as we know to the commission and making it available for public for consideration on what the impacts of those sites would be.
But this presentation is assuming that if that site's paid for the remediation and have to happen with the mill site, then that's a project cost to the county. Or as indicated, other than we'll give you the land, so to speak. Infrastructure, remediation, none of that's ever been discussed or offered, so we're certainly not assuming that they're gonna pay any remediation, we're assuming it's the project.
Sure.
As we present.
Before you love the chair, so I want to make sure I understand what you were asking. You said if they find hazardous material, is it required to be cleaned up? And did you mean is the DEQ require it, or is it required before we do the bill?
I personally don't know, but I'm assuming that about it, you run into hazardous materials, whoever owns land, like you can't just bury it, you have to clean it up, correct? Yeah, so.
No matter whether we built on it or you guys have.
Whether you build on it or not, you have, once you find it, you have to clean it up, so the county would have to.
If you know about it, then the property owner would have to clean it up.
Cover back up.
Okay.
That was my
And
assumption.
cleaning up probably means truckloads of it away to a landfill and you stop it.
And you will know that when you do the geotech on the property, you'll know what's down. Okay.
We would have a better understanding of it to go forward. You can always end up with surprises as you start digging in.
Okay, yeah, Bob.
Now, my name is Bob Mahoney. I live in Morrow County, 83 years. I spent 60 times working on the fairgrounds, helping develop that site. I brought in my dozer, backhoe, cleaned up, worked my tail off. And I would hate to see that all go down the drain. You know, that fairground, what it was, what it is now is you don't realize the effort, the work that the community put into developing that with the new ground and the grass. Ken Turner, he come in and seeded all the grass so we'd have a good turf for a football team. It's not just the rodeo that I've seen funerals at the out there, we have weddings out there, we have playoff football games out there, we have everything. And the parking is marginal out there at best. And I would hate to see it go backward. The access to the lower field and that off of the highway is not good. If you put the big building there and have a lot of trucks, you come right by the schoolhouse and everything. I think the site sucks. We don't need it there. You wanna build it down to the Gimsy down there. They've already squandered millions of dollars trying to make the cogen plant work that didn't work. Why don't you put something down there that works? You got a place down there and got lots of room. I just would fight it all away.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Rick?
I have a quick question on the fairgrounds. Has the parking issue ever been solved? On the fairgrounds?
No.
Yeah.
But the thing is there's, you know, we've talked with fair, we've talked with rodeo. There are a ton of different ways to handle parking. And as we've talked with them, there's, you know, depending on where the site is, if the courthouse goes in the fairground site, there's things we would look to mitigate to help increase parking. And we've heard from those organizations, they're willing to work with us on it. It does impact the use of the fairgrounds. I'm not gonna lie about that. And it might require us to create temporary stables so people can keep their horses there and we park somewhere else. But those are things that we've heard that, you know, City Hefner is willing to help us figure those things out, but we don't have an answer directly for it. No, not at this time.
I've got a question on this side that I've never heard answered. That it's the fairground side is a commercial building in a residential zone. Does not that require a public hearing? And in the public hearing, does the public say we don't want it there? So how can, is that true, first of all?
So first of all, it is zoned residential, I think residential 2. Which does allow a conditional use for governmental buildings. And so buildings like schools, which is also in an R2 zone, and courthouses can be put in there. There is a conditional use permit hearing that would be held. And generally those are, though you have to have a site plan with landscaping, parking set up, everything done. So we need probably, is it 30 or 40% drawings for, not even that? Schematic, like, yeah, 15%. So we haven't proceeded to that point because we got this, this curveball out of left field, since I'm answering the balls out. And so we had planned to be, if the opening it out of Hefner, we had planned to be taking it to the city of Hefner for conditional use permit in May, end of April, 1st of May with the site plan. They wouldn't want to see just a blank site saying we want to put it there. They want to see the impacts of it. And then the conditional use, since it is conditionally permitted, says you have to consider certain items in there, which is sight, sound, barriers for encumbrances on other territories and other things like that. So it's not like the residents can come and just say, no, we don't want it. No, because legally it is allowed if they take care of the conditional considerations that are outlined in the city planning code. So there will be a public hearing at any of these sites, whether it's a Hefner one, county planning zone or whatnot, where residents can come in and say, no, I don't think it addresses sight or height or sound, or they didn't do the parking right, so we don't want it there. So those are kind of the considerations that are made during a conditional use permit.
Who determines then, is it the zoning committee or commission, city zoning, who determines yay or nay?
So the planning commission makes a recommendation to the city council, is my understanding. Correct me, I have several planning.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
how does the county work, yeah, different.
Okay,
With the city, the planning commission makes the decision, for the city of Pepper, the planning commission makes the decision. If the, person applying for, entity applying for a permit was denied, they can appeal that to the council.
yes.
So if a permit is granted under a conditional use or a variance, then that entity can go forward. If it's denied, they can appeal to the city.
Okay, so those things will still be coming, but we haven't directed this group to get to that point until we have the site figured out.
So in answer to the question, then the planning commission or the city of Kettner council could turn this down, potentially.
If they have a legal reason to do so, yes.
Sheila, did you wanna speak?
She wanted to learn like the check. You talked about the fairgrounds and you talked about the rodeo, although you're talking about putting maybe some stalls down there and parking somewhere else. There's no other parking except to go out to the mill and ship them in. There's not enough parking lot where they're at. What about our football? We're gonna put kids closer to the courthouse during football. How does that impact our football fields?
That's a good question. I mean, by and large, they're towards the end of the day when the court's done. And so,
Do they go later?
Courts?
You have football earlier. What about the junior high that plays down there? What about the soccer? What about right now, we've got T-ball down there. And
and
those are earlier in the day sometimes.
yeah, those are impacts. And those are things that, are considered and we have to look into.
I would rather have my tax dollars spent at the fairgrounds where we can go and fix the infrastructure and we have the potential of bringing more in something to our area.
Yeah.
Because we need that income and we need our industrial and we need that infrastructure down there. And that's a small cost in the difference in getting more here.
Yeah, Molly?
I have a question regarding the infrastructure at the mill site again. So we're talking about all the infrastructure going in, is that being built in as overkill to account for potential growth of the site later? Like is the courthouse bill footing that bill? Or is that something that we're only putting in enough infrastructure for the building?
You're asking questions that have not decided. For instance, the courthouse was gonna go up the middle side, and the courthouse needs an 8-inch water. I don't think that's the numbers. But for future use, you want a 14-inch, so that it expands other things. Either the city of Hatmere, which could expand and take over that area, or more for somebody else, we would look to participate, because this project doesn't benefit. So this project can't pay, just it can't, but when you pay 14-inch lines, when it only needs 8. I mean, does that make sense?
That's my question. Was other counties for growth, we were putting the bill, or if there was gonna be reimbursement from potential growth later?
We would certainly bring that up in a lot of projects, they have latecomers agreements. So to speak, so the lead agency that is the first one there, overbuild a little bit, but they have the ability to then collect monies from people who come later. That all, but that's not anything that we've discussed and worked through, and
So it's not built into the number.
No, not at all. I have a question for the engineering firm. There's 100 acres there and we only need 2, basically. Is there not 2 acres that's never been used? Particularly on the upper out of the floodplain that's available, it's never been used. Why would it have a lot of hazardous material? Is there not 2 acres? Yeah.
The only anecdotal evidence about the history, it wasn't recorded what was used in the evidence. So, I don't know.
But those of us that have lived here all of our life know that there's nothing ever used up there. But that,
Yes.
yeah, what's been used?
Well, if you talk to the guys that used to work there, of their own talk about those 2-story buildings on the second road, the bridge extension. They had oil storage and things like that up there, and there's possibly enough activity on that side of the road. And those buildings down there were highly shot.
Yeah. We've also had verification that there's asbestos and fiberglass buried. And part of the area up on the hill was used for a landfill, boneyard. In fact, you can drive up to the very top and see some of that. The south side where the mills area is, you had a prodigious amount of lumber stacked there. And crazy as it is, when you have a lot of down lumber, it emits certain chemicals that gets in the soil as well. And so you have challenges there. So there's a lot of unknowns as we go to it. And so there's challenges.
So that's the road is also in the floodplain, so
yeah,
potentially increase cost.
Chair, we've had a lot of comments from the group and I love it. There has been a hand up since the very start.
Okay,
Let me see if I can.
so someone on a phone that wants to speak, could you identify who you are, please?
Yeah, this is Patrick Collins. Thank you, commissioners, for having this meeting. I just wanted to see if you guys could address what's going on with the bridge updates or expansions that may or may not be needed at the fairgrounds site.
I think it's sufficient.
Yeah, so the bridge that's down by the school going up to the direct area, which would be the main entrance to that's very sufficient. It's actually quite wide. Our civil engineers looked at it. That one would be adequate for the needs of the project. The other bridge that is on a city road on Elder Street, it's slim and wouldn't necessarily need to be improved because we aren't looking at a major traffic impact on that area. While this is a state building, it would not require sidewalks and curbs be built all along city street to facilitate the building. We would plan to do that on the main entrance to allow access and accessibility there. But the bridge over Hinton Creek that would be the main access is sufficient for the needs of the building.
That include fire truck? Fire truck?
Yeah.
Little boys to get your construction equipment in there?
That's what our civil engineer has confirmed, yes. It's a nice bridge.
Let's take another one. Kirsten? Did you want to speak? No. Yeah, Kirsten, you want to speak?
Yes, so one of the things that I see you guys talking about is the different things that have to be done at the mill site. Where I came from, we had a mill site, same thing, it got shut down in the 80s, so on and so on. But we were able to build, yes, there's certain things that have to be done, but we were able to build a variety of things, including our high school there. So I don't understand why this is such a big issue.
And I would say it is a usable site. I mean, the Port of Morrow wouldn't hold on to it and market it if it wasn't. It's just there's unknowns, and for different utilizations that we might find a surprise. It might be just something where we have to carve out a couple cubic feet of dirt because they drained their oil pans there. Or it could be a huge area of, buried stuff. Everything can be mitigated, and it's just the unknown additional cost. So if it was too scary to touch, we would have just said Port of Morrow thanks, but no thanks. But this is a very considerate offer with a good partner for the county in development and economic development, and it's something that could make some good headway for that area. Unfortunately, there's unknowns and there's infrastructure that we've got to utilize to do that, and we just want to make sure to the public that going with this gift horse, we want to make sure it's shoed and shod and saddled the right way before we jump on it and take it for a ride.
And I understand that. I mean, I come from a construction background where you may say that this is the quote that we're going to give you, but in the end, this is where it's going to change. I mean, everybody knows that there's unknowns no matter what you do, but it feels like you guys are counting it out because you're coming up with all these costs, but yet I've seen it done. And it may not have been a courthouse, but it was a high school. I mean, to me, that, I don't know.
Yeah. And Kirsten, we haven't counted it out. We haven't inflated the cost. The major cost that we have in there is just for the infrastructure and for the geotech the studies that we need to do to see if there's anything else. We're definitely not counting it out for it. More or less the $3 to $4 million is to get the water and sewer there. And we just want to, put a little asterisk there saying there's some other things. If we were counting it out, we wouldn't have it on this list. There's others that we dropped off the list.
I just feel like it's a better spot versus having it next to our elementary school personally. And then next to the fairgrounds and the rodeo. I just think it's a better solution.
Okay, I don't see anybody else online, is there, on Zoom?
I'm not seeing any other.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, Janet?
I'm Janet Greenup. I live in Hefner. And I just want to talk about history a little bit. This is our courthouse. We are the county seat, and the pioneers came here, and this is where they settled. Because it's wonderful. There's water and fresh air, and the mountains aren't very far away. And out of respect for those pioneers, why are we trying to change everything? Go down to the mill site. I haven't heard one person complain about it being down there. But if you want to go to the fairgrounds, how many people does it affect? And how many people have said, no, we don't want it there? We are the voters. You need to listen to what we want, not just ignore us.
Yeah, Rick.
So I'm gonna switch for a half a second to Morgan. Has there been a seismic survey down there? They're the ones that have the earthquakes. I've known of 2 earthquakes fairly close to Morgan. Because if you have to do pilings down there, I lived in San Francisco for 2 years. We did an average of 27 foot a dig on a 2-inch hole with, I think it was number 6 bars on squirrel cage. We had to put every 6 feet around the perimeter of our buildings, and we were just building houses.
But could you address what the state requires as far as seismic?
Well, the geotech report is the survey that we do plan to do if that site selected. So we're accounting for that. Whatever that finds is similar to the mill site, the survey itself will make a recommendation about the sites. But there are seismic zones. There's like, you look at a map of Oregon,
right,
and there's a design zone that we have to design for. So that tells us the risk category to design for. So we would already know that.
But you can't answer that, whether that's in it right now.
Oh, like which risk category it's in? I don't know off the top of my head.
Because they have earthquakes down there. I know of 2 in my life.
Yeah.
I know of none up here.
Structural engineer would know which.
But there's a proven level of structure there. It's not like that's an unknown. I mean, we've got a lot of buildings there, so.
Well, I understand.
So yes.
Okay. Trevor, do you have a question?
Yeah, Trevor Ray, Heather, I guess my question is, why do we need to pump the sewer uphill? I know it's been done at the fire hall, they have a septic, we have a septic tank there, and we pump it up past the base, or by the baseball field. And drop into the main line right at the sewer plant. Technically, you only have to pump the septic tank every 3 to 5 years, depending on the usage. That building's probably not a high usage, I mean, maybe 10 people in there a day, 8 people. I mean, you gotta look at the cost of what, I guess, cost of pumping a septic tank is $300-400. Every 3 to 4 years, 5 years. That's, you save a lot of money by instead of installing a pump system all the way up back into town. And drilling a well, I've done that too, and a septic tank, it's about 50 grand probably now, it's 50, 80. One that size might be 100,000. And a water treatment system on it. Be a lot cheaper down there, you already have clean water, if you couldn't find clean water down there, going the well, put the system on it, but. And going by the school today, at 3:30, 3 o'clock, there's 100 kids and all their parents pick them up right there on that street where that great bridge is. The school gonna have to change their ways and have kids pick up somewhere else. Open the street back up. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have anything, it's.
No, I
Well, let's go back to, we don't want to turn this into a big. Maybe they could address what you said.
Yeah, have you considered drilling a well and a septic system? The OSU extension office.
It was priced on the. It was option B. It wasn't the preferred option, but it is an option.
That spreadsheet is on the website, if anyone wants to see the details of.
And you were pretty close on what you were suggesting for prices. 105,000, I think, is what it was for the well. For the well.
And the spreadsheet on the website has known and unknown estimates of cost. It is,
I'm gonna say you're also correct, and the report is a strong indication that any well out there is gonna have to be treated. They have explained.
Right, I understand. Even if you drill it further up on the hill by that the transmission station, you're probably gonna get clean water. Take a boatload of money. I mean, I know what piping system costs to get it up to Hetner. It's not gonna be cheap, like you showed. You're gonna have to cross the highway, multiple properties.
yeah, anybody else want to? Okay. Did you get, are you done, Trevor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Stuart? Yeah.
That 100 acres is the only industrial land that South County has. So, and there's no way you could put the Fair Rodeo down there. You would ruin all that industrial land. It would be foolish. They 2 million plus do that work. If I were to ask you to raise your hand, how many people here would like to see that site be down at the Kentu? Raise your hand. We'd like to see it done. Kentu price. Now, how many like to see it at the rodeo fairground? How many like to see it in Boardman? So you guys have come here to get the public opinion. So, and I know time is money, but it's been 16 months that you guys have been commissioners. So.
Well, let's stay on topic here. I'm talking about
time is money.
Yeah.
So 16 months, so let's don't push this, okay? Now, I just looked up the fund, the amount of money that county has on the website, treasury website. $24 million in their state treasury fund and almost $35 million in other investments. County has lots of money, folks. So this is not an issue of money, period. Okay? It's an issue of what is the best side. And if we can develop that, and we talked about this this afternoon, having a partnership between the port and the Morrow County commissioners and the city working together, this could turn Morrow County south end around. And the amount of money that was coming in from industrial development would have an amazing impact on the south end. We're only about 80%. So it's really important that the Board of Commissioners make a wise decision right here. And I think the wisest decision is to the Kentu ground and work together.
Okay, thank you. Who is it over? Court?
Yeah, Corey speaking, city manager. I guess my question is, so 12.5 million is allocated by the state, the match 12.5, so at a $25 million budget. Would the county, and let's say it went, as far as $3 million, to get the site down at the mill. Would the county be willing to go $3 million over budget?
Well, I think if we drew back up that spreadsheet, I think it's at 3.6 up to unknown.
So
So maybe-
the three is kind of the known cost to bring sewer, water, take care of some of the other discussion on the options. But those numbers are just bring the infrastructure. There are unknowns if you find and have to remediate soil, et cetera, that could balloon in.
So how about 4.5 million, would the county, I mean,
See, the thing about it is when we were talking about this, you know, how to do this meeting here, I was the one that asked that they come up with put the unknowns in there. Because I want you people to know, and it's a countywide project. The people in the Irving and Boardman, Lexington, Ione, it's their money too. They need to know what it's gonna cost to do each site. Now, unknowns worry me. I don't think you want us coming back and going, oh, it's gonna be another 2-3 million. So that's why I asked them to put unknown in there so that you know, just like us, that we got a base price that's pretty solid at 3.6 plus unknowns. Okay, so you guys know what we know. So that's what I wanted to say.
yeah. So I guess, my question would be, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic, confrontational, or anything like that, but would it be worth it to the rodeo committee and the fair board to go over the $4.5 million to get it to stay in Temple? Would that be worth it to you?
I think it's a different question to ask what the board's opinion is versus. The people just voted and wanted it. I don't think money is so really our biggest concern. Yeah, I think we already talked about it.
So money, yeah.
Well,
I'm just trying to.
This room money isn't a big thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to get out of this all and get it here in heaven. How do you do that?
I know, I'm with you. I'm with you.
But, yeah, it'd be nice if somebody just, I mean, really. Just, you know, come out and say, yeah, we'll either spend the money to get it done here or be realistic and say we can't really see it, getting put there because of the extra costs and we might have to go to.
Let me ask you this, you know, when you talk about county spending money, what if we did a city county port together to put this bill, to get it there? How about that?
That's actually a good plan, David, or excuse me, Christian Science. You know, that, I mean, I think you guys would.
We don't care who pays for it.
Yeah.
Just put it up.
Well, a lot of people do care who pays. That's very important. Yeah, let's hold this down to where we each person talk at one time.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that seems like it.
And this
Fair.
so at this point in time, it is solely a county issue.
Understood.
There is no indication from the city that they have money or and are willing to pay for that. No indication from before we met with them numerous times that they're willing to pay for any infrastructure. So as we piece this down, we've looked at it solely from this is a county issue to decide.
Okay.
Now, you want to spend it?
You want to sit here and hash it out now? No, but okay, at this point, you have approached this and talked about it already.
Yes.
And you have come to a dead end as far as a three-way deal, it's just on the county, that's what you just said.
Well, there could be more negotiation. I'm just saying, we've met with these guys.
Right, at this point, let me say that.
Know that they have money or an inclination to.
Okay.
participate.
Got it. Cover it.
Just kind of a question for you, Chad, and the city guys. I know the the sewer system's been in the work for however many years, revamping it or moving it, right?
would it behoove us to think about putting this up when you guys are putting it down by Max Field or down by in the mill zone would be? I mean, it's already gonna be done, or donate part of the mill zone, put lagoons down there for the septic.
We're currently, the current plans are, revamping our current wastewater system. And possibly the, building of some additional systems at the plant. Right now, studies that Anderson Perry is looking at does not include like a tree lagoon that was gonna take 30 acres. It's looking at, the solids and the ammonia mitigation for effluent.
I was thinking to mitigate some of that, pumping it clear out back into the city and crossing the highway, well, we're gonna cross the highway anyway.
Okay, is, anybody else directly on?
So that sounds like a temporary fix to a permanent problem, and I don't need to comment on that. But what's the build cost of a 24,000 square foot building? Take the infrastructure out. If you've got the perfect site, what's the build cost? This particular building on the perfect site, already there.
Budget. And right now, we're working with the budget given to us, so the 24.
So you're saying without any infrastructure, this building is costing 24 million? Right now, regardless of where it goes, because you're gonna have infrastructure wherever you go. Mill site, fair site, Boardman site. So you're already talking about overages. It's just,
Well, so as a point on that, there's a certain consideration that's built into that budget. Hooking into a municipal system is a one-time charge fairly easy. That's built into that cost. You know, it's running at a mile or a mile and a half. That's not expected.
I'm trying to come up with a base number. But we then have to be plus.
So it's, we don't have it designed. I went through the program and, right now it's at about 24,000 square feet. In the end, we're not sure we can afford that, right? So sometimes you're asking end questions that are hard to answer right now. But that was the budget, that 24.5, 25 million.
So what does the state say about us cutting into 20,000?
20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
As long as we meet the state requirement.
Is that a state?
On their side of the deal, that they're okay. It's not about the overall number, it's about their requirements for.
Right, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, Alan.
So I have a question about the budget statement that she just said, that we're working within the budget given. So we're attempting to actually tap out of that 24 million, or we were budgeting frugally and building what we needed.
I would say.
Like, are we trying to spend that money, or are we trying to spend our money?
No, I've actually had them make cuts. So we're already known, and we are not shooting to say, hey, we got 24, let's throw a big party. There are certain standards to be built when you talk about a circuit court. There are certain departments that are conceivably best and advantageously positioned right by. District attorney, the juvenile, those kind of things that have to be in there. There's some that you get some return on, like having the justice court over there. A single point for security, for court security, but then you have two separate courtrooms. We could bare bones it and have a courthouse where it's just a court and nothing else. And it would sit there just that. And we could get it down to 20 million or 20,000. It would not be as effective as spending a little bit more money and putting these other entities nearby. And so we've been working on that program. They did an extensive programming designs set up with the county. And I told them to cut some out because our juvenile department, we were going to move the whole juvenile department over there. Well, at 1,200 square feet, at $600 a square feet, that's a lot of money. So instead of that, they'll have a nice room where when they need to use it, they can use it. But otherwise, they're officing out of this building. And so those kind of decisions, we're definitely not trying to make a Taj Mahal there.
Okay, yeah, Stuart.
24,000 square feet, and over 20 $4 million is over $1,000 a square foot.
That's
That's a lot of money.
actually another project. that
How would you like to pay over $1,000?
With inflation.
That would usually be the construction cost, and that's what.
Okay.
You also meet, you also meet today's standards that are given. But also it's included.
George,
Thank you. I think that if we really want to get out of the fairgrounds, then we should be asking you guys to have a serious conversation with the Port of Morrow. The Port of Morrow also works for us, we vote them in. So John has said there's a consensus. John, I want to vote, I want a commitment from the port to partner with this, because if it really could support the infrastructure of putting something there and building more there, then let's do that. Because the port, I'm sorry, the port has been giving the Millside lip service for 30 years. And that's all they give. So I'd like to ask you to ask them to partner with you.
could you reiterate what you've done already as far as talking to?
But it's not done yet.
Well, Roger, you said paragraphs, you meant.
I meant, yeah,
Okay,
I supported at the fairgrounds. I work in the justice system.
gotcha.
And I see how we do not change our way of life when court is held. Nobody makes sure their children don't walk by the courthouse when there's court that day. I bet you guys don't even know what day court is held. You know, I see people coming into court, and when we have a prisoner coming into court, they're chained to a wooden bench in our courthouse. How secure is that? And we're a few blocks from the school. Our courthouse is also built in a residential area. We have neighbors, we have people that live right next door to our courthouse. They are not harmed. I mean, they don't get robbed or broken into stuff on a regular basis. I don't have fear. I do not have fear of a courthouse being next to the football field, next to the elementary school, next to residential in any way, shape, or form. I do have concern with the fact that we've already made cuts. Because under a commissioners, we built this building. This building was not even moved in for a year, and they remodeled it for growth. We built a building in Irrigate. Guess what? They've been in there a little over a year. They're talking about remodeling for growth. We're building another building where we could have moved departments into to allow for growth here and there. And now we're cutting it, so then that stagnates growth. Morrow County is growing, we need to be able to grow. And so I want it to be in Hecker. I don't have an issue with it being at the fairground. I think those obstacles can be ironed out. And I like the idea of the mill site, but I also see a lot of obstacles. So I want to invite the Port of Morrow to the table with their checkbook to help.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to comment? Yes, Steve.
This is your second meeting. How many people in the other meeting wanted it over at the mill and not at the fairground?
I
I can tell you.
maybe keep track, maybe right up.
Right, those are 30.
I think there's one or two funded boardmen. There were a couple that wanted boardmen, and there were a couple that wanted it at the mill site, and there was only one who thought that the fairgrounds was a good site for it. Yeah. And there were a couple that were concerned about,
The cost.
the cost, yes, there were several.
One specifically, for sure.
Okay,
It was not, money be damned, it was control, put a lid on the cost, and put a lid on the unknowns. There was actually two on this.
okay. Does anybody else have a comment or what?
Well, the comment is putting a lid on it if you want to expand and the port is gracious enough to donate land like they've done numerous times down here, but you want to expand and revamp that whole thing down there. Be great to have that infrastructure already there, whether, I know it's a huge cost to begin with, but once the courthouse is there, the cost is gone. At the middle. Then anybody can move in and tie in and put office. I think they're putting office buildings in soon, I think.
for the public.
I mean, they're gonna have that cost as well.
Right.
Yeah, if we're talking about expansion, we're gonna be limited here at some point. Because once if that goes in there, you're locked in.
Yeah.
You cannot add any more without impacting the neighborhood and everybody around that. But if we move out to the port, we're unlimited in Courthouse.
Any other,
We do have. Kirsten.
oh, Kristen, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things. There was one thing that Trevor had brought up about what's gonna happen with the school because they do pick up behind. So that was the one question that didn't get answered.
Answer that. Yeah, the school has to answer that unfortunately, they have a bad design and they're using county space to facilitate their pickups right now. It's not something that necessarily would be eliminated, but it's something that we'd have to work towards to make sure that there's a safe space for certain areas, and also ask them to reconsider shutting down that road because that doesn't solve all the issues either.
Okay, anybody else?
Anything else, Kirsten? She muted, so maybe.
You're back on.
Well, I mean, Dave already overlooked it, so it's fine.
Was your question not answered?
No, it really wasn't, but that's fine. But the other thing that I have is what's going to happen with the fairgrounds and the rodeo. Yes, you say we can set up places for horses and that, but I know in Oregon this morning or this afternoon, you had brought up different solutions that you brought up over there, but that you haven't brought up over here.
What were those?
That there was the possibility of moving it over to, there was a lot more in depth, I feel like, compared to this one, of if we move over to the mill site.
What issues did we bring up there that we didn't bring up here, that you said we did?
There was, I don't know, it was just, to me, it was a different conversation. There was other people who also had agreed that it should be at the mill site for the courthouse, but
Kirsten, if it's helpful, if the courthouse were to go to the mill site, one of the things that we'd have to do is, I mean, that's a $3 to $4 million investment in infrastructure. The next step that we would have to coordinate with the port and with the city of Hefner is a series of visioning meetings to get the community to see what really do we want to do with the mill site. Quite frankly, holding out for a large industrial complex is not going to happen. You don't have the transportation structure there. As soon as they pulled out the rail, it kind of killed it. And they will develop all along I-84 and 80, you know, because they've got it. It's just too expensive to run it down unless they're based down here. However, that doesn't mean that no industrial is going to happen there, because we've got Blue Mountain and manufacturing and coil that's being very successful. If we set up for some of those smaller to medium-sized ones and create a nice industrial park and then redevelop another part into something else, whether it includes fairground or something else, to be more attractive than deteriorating buildings. Those are some ideas. And I'm just throwing that out there. There's nothing been predetermined, but getting that infrastructure would be a component of having that discussion.
Matt, I want to add to that, you know, we can sit here and talk about it right now, but I would think that if we want to look at the situation you are, the principals should be at the table, the port, the city, and the county, and talk turkey. You know, I mean, and then the ideas can come out, we can come back here and have another, but have a solid plan. And then, and the port and the city can say, no, we're not interested. You know, we're not interested in any kind of partnership, we're not interested in any kind of cost sharing. Or we are, here's what we'll do. See, those are the kind of things. Now, it looks like preliminary talks have yielded nothing. So, you know, maybe that is the route that people would want to go is.
So who can facilitate that? You guys, city, court?
We'll have city county board meetings. Or
Well, there's three bodies that get together. Yeah.
I would think that the port commission could add that to our agenda.
But there again, it has to, this has to be done soon, you know? I mean, we gotta, yeah, just a second. The clock is running and it costs you your money when the clock is running. So, you know, if we want to do, if you're looking at long range planning would tie into what the decision we're gonna make. We need to get solid commitment from all these three, either yay or nay, so that we can all make a decision. But you know, we have to know that information. Are we gonna partner with them? Are we not? Does that play into our decision? And it has to be simple. Well, it doesn't have to be, but you know, it's just sitting there burning that taxpayer money. So that's my thought, you know.
So I think that's the best thing that's come from this meeting tonight, is for the board and for the commissioners and for the city to have a meeting immediately to start putting something together to say, okay, what can we do here? Because there's tremendous potential. There may not be potential for one large industrial company, but there's tremendous potential for smaller industrial companies if you have the infrastructure. You know, build it and they'll come, but you've got to work together. So I suggest that's what you do.
I think that's a huge thing, because if we can all be adults and come together and come up with a solution, because to me personally, because I have somebody going into kindergarten, I don't feel comfortable having the courthouse behind. And yes, there may be nothing that ever happens, but as a parent, you have that fear. And I don't live in Heppner. I live in Ione. So I don't have my kids walking anywhere near that. So I can't say that I've had my kids walk near that when there's criminals there. I can't. And it may never have happened. And it may never happen going forward. But the thought still crosses my mind that something may happen. And that's extremely scary coming from a parent's side. And it may only be me. I don't know. But if we can come to a solution where all three entities come together and have that discussion to see if even the mill site is something that could possibly happen between the three, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, any other, John?
Regarding, you know, the city, the county, and the port involved with the old mill site. So this would go back 2 months ago when the mill site was first brought up as a potential site. So, city had a meeting with, DLR and Alliance, Department of Justice was there, where we discussed the Heppner site, and then I believe it was later in the same week that we had a joint conference with the city, county, and port. And from that, the city has been working with Morrow County Planning, because we have to figure out the planning that goes involved with it. And so, you know, we've had talks with Tamara and Daisy. We have to involve the DLCD, so the state. And so right now the city isn't looking at trying to annex the port site, but we've just done very preliminary groundwork of, okay, we could send water anywhere. That's not a problem. We have residents up Willow Creek that get water from city water, and they pay a service fee on that. But receiving the waste is the big question. And we've reached out to DEQ, and if anybody in this room has had experience dealing with DEQ, they understand that it's not a quick process. You don't just get it straight. Yeah, you can send this volume, this many equivalent residential units, anything like that. Chad and I have both reached out. We've reached out through our engineers, and we still haven't got an answer from DEQ. But there is preliminary conversation between the city and the county on what would be called a cherry stem urban growth boundary extension that would kind of just run up Highway 74 to the port property. Once we get some more information on that, I talked to Lisa Middledorf, the general manager of the port. I said, once we get a little more information on what this would involve, then we bring forward into the conversation, because, you know, there's gold mine exceptions that have to be addressed. There's a lot of different, DLCD goals that have to be addressed for urban growth boundary. You know, looking at the zoning of the sites and everything else. So it's not like it's we can sit down, all of us, everybody in this room, and get an answer done on city services, county businesses, and port property in one meeting. It's a very involved process, and the preliminary has started in the last 2 months.
So John, how much capacity does the Hefner wastewater system have? You know, because there's all the talk of sending the wastewater from the mill site of industrial development out there. So I mean, it really does come back to what is the capacity that the city has to handle the waste stream?
When we're at our peak during irrigation season, like July, we're about 60% of our capacity on our wastewater system. So just the preliminary talks have been, you know, we can receive small industry, cottage industry. Obviously, logistically, you're not going to get something like a Lamb Weston build out there, and we couldn't take that volume. But when you take the 700 plus services that we have here, you know, taking us to a 60% at peak during the winter, we're about 40%.
Design flow for the plant is 250,000 gallons a day. We average about 140,000 over the course of the year. So we have room. Don't matter. Yeah, the design flow is 250.
Yeah, Molly?
I just like to say on the record, because I've heard several different versions of it tonight, that it was left field. We just heard about the Kindu site 2 months ago. The Kindu site was drawn up and requested to be looked at in September at your first meeting. It's not been 2 months. It's been quite a while now.
There was an ORS that I read multiple times that was sent to me by our county council that specifically said, did you read it? It specifically says it shall be built within the city of Hefner.
I understand.
It's an Oregon law, and that's what we were going on, and our legal counsel even said. So, you know, to say that, you know, that we didn't look outside the city, when you're sitting there looking at that, of course, you know, I mean, you have to follow what we do.
I get that, but I'm just saying several times we've heard it, and the community made the request for it to be looked at further.
Well, you can't look at something that isn't legal. I suppose you could, but we weren't going to. We were going to do what was legal, and that's what we understood to be legal. Follow Oregon law. Okay. I mean, it is what it is. That's what we were doing. Anything else? Yeah, Sheila.
The issue of getting it from one place to the other, the railroad right of way has a legal county right of way right down the center of it for utilities.
We were anticipating using that. It's not so much the easement option, it's just the engineering of it. Water, really easy to get there. You just lay pipe. The sewer gets a little hard running uphill. You're looking at, you know, several lift stations or a pressurized system, and whoever inherits that gets all that O&M. So, so there's a lot of give and take, but you're right. We have a corridor to get there. That's not one of the issues. If you notice the price estimates, there's nothing about land acquisition, because you're right on the spot. We have a venue to get it there. It's just the cost of doing it.
So would water be city water? Yet try to get a septic?
That would be one of the options.
All right.
Yeah.
A great septic system that are going to be less expensive than traveling that far.
Well, those people there answer that question. Is there enough
To
expensive?
match between options A and B for water and A and B for sewer.
Yeah, they're very black and white. They're not emotional at all. They're just saying, you know, there is a better system, there isn't, and here's what it's gonna cost. So they're the ones that answer a lot of questions where somebody will say to us, well, it seems like this would be easier, this would be cheaper. they're the ones that tell us they don't know, or yeah, so that's their job, because they keep us in real loop when we're working on things like this. Anybody else got any questions?
We have one online.
Yes, Kirsten.
Yeah, I like how you cut Molly off like you did me at 1 o'clock when I brought up the same thing. We have been,
Kristen, let's not talk personal things, okay?
we're
That's
not
one of the-
talking personal things. We're talking about the 1 o'clock Aragon one, where I brought up the same exact thing that Molly did. And you said that somebody anonymously sent something in so that you guys got the letter back. And I said you should have had all your ducks in a row and contacted them before. You can't just go off of the OR statutes and that. You should have done the research before so that we wouldn't be in this boat that we're in. I've kept quiet this whole time because we've already had this conversation. But it's the same thing.
We did do the research. We checked with our county council. That's research. And he told us, no, it could not be built outside the city. That, we did do research, and your lawyers tell you what's legal and what's not legal. So, anybody else? Okay. All right, then, I guess we'll call the public testimony part, public comment. Propose, and then if the commission wants to talk some more and make a decision, we can do that, or what's your thoughts?
It's a stat clarification, is that something?
Well, I think that's what they were.
That's done.
Yeah, I think that's part of for the public comment, you know. Well,
We just did it together, so.
do you want to think on everything we've heard and talk later? Do we want to do something tonight? Any thoughts on that?
Well, if there's going to be discussion on cost share and participation on infrastructure, I think that, you know, we have to be the decision if we're going to go down that route. Then we should be having those discussions.
Do you want to instruct the administrator to set up a meeting with the principals?
Sure.
Okay,
Well, that's mine. You?
Yeah.
Here?
That's right.
Yeah.
But okay, let's give them some guidelines on what we would like to see come out of the meeting. Do we want any electeds in that meeting too? One of us, one of their electeds? Or just administrators like Lisa, Max, or John?
So how about if we did the executive, and then the board chair for the city's case, the mayor, because they would be the representative for the governing body.
Just electeds?
I think that the more people you have, the harder it is to have.
Yes.
Again, a smaller group, and I have confidence that you would represent our views.
I think he said chair and administrator. Chair.
No,
No, I don't.
John and Corey and Lisa and Joe, still your chair, John?
Yeah, it's fine with me. Would you do that? Well, we'll have use, try to set that meeting up and see what everybody says, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I know Lisa's out of town until Friday, but I think we could have something set up first part next week.
Can she Zoom?
She's at DC.
Oh, I'll just check and see.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
But I mean, we could have it, you know.
I kind of like to get thing going this week, you know, that's all. If she can't, she can't. But,
yeah,
you know, we have 2 days left in the week.
Let me see what I can do.
Okay.
So I have a question.
I'd rather meet in person, but.
DLR engineering. So if the decision's made to go ahead and do a geotechnical study at mill site, and you go in and you do 3 different spots, if any of those 3 spots come up with something that is adverse, that will, even if it isn't the mill site, will have to be cleaned up, correct? Or is that not correct?
So,
I can't answer, I don't know that's in, you're talking about one, we would have to get permission, actually, why didn't we do the port, right? You'd have to get permission from the port to go out and drill and dig on their property. They are the legal owner of that property, so if there's something found, I think it's all of that involved drainage. But no, that was my point, is, so my concern is the port can be willing to take that risk. And I'm not asking you, John, I'm not asking you. It's a legitimate question. Well, it is. Is it something that you're willing to risk? And you have something you can ask.
Well,
And this,
because we found it and then doing an exploration, I don't know, makes us liable, you liable to clean it up. I think the land owner. It's. Well, that might be want to be answered by the port, irregardless of any kind of joint.
that's why,
Oh, that's what you just.
that's what I brought to John. I
Okay.
brought that to John's attention.
And Commissioner, I would also, I don't know legally, find it.
we're gonna build.
If you're gonna build, you have to. I don't think, I'm not sure you have to, for instance, we know a lot of our buildings have it tested. But a lot of, we're not disturbing them, you don't have to clean it up, we don't have to do it. I would think it's the same way.
So you tested 3 spots and you found one that was viable,
Yes.
like the corner closest to the golf course, which is assuming that's probably the most likely spot. Then you would just not even consider the other 2 sites. If they tested was stuff that you had to clean. And then you would just focus on the site. That's what I'm kind of like.
Right, I would think so, we know it's closer to the services, the costs go down, doesn't have any remediation, and it's certainly make it a lot easier.
And it is actually it's out of the 500-year floodplain except for the parking, correct?
Most of it is, all of it's out of the 100-year floodplain. There is a bit of 500-year floodplain that touches along the south end. So it all depends on how we decide.
Ultimately, is that the onus to answer that question is at the port, they're legal.
I understand that supports.
If they want to take on that.
Yes.
Really.
My question was, do they have to report it? If they take.
Yeah, understood.
That was the question.
I think that
And
if they do,
they report it to the port, not.
we'd have to ask them,
Right.
yeah, or ask whoever, they're legal.
We'd certainly share the reports.
Yeah, I think they've already done, haven't they already done some, hole drilling out there and stuff? Yeah. I just kind of stand up. Also list everything, I think the mill side offers the best opportunity. Like the first one, just have to work through all the parameters that are laid out in front of you. It's not gonna be easy, whether it's here or down at the mill. You've got all these little issues that you gotta take care of. You know, the excavation and everything, a lot of it is pretty simple. There's a lot of it that just has to be worked through. Right. Yep. Well, we're gonna, that's my opinion. Okay. We appreciate that, Bob. Thank you. Okay. Then.
Biggest parting shot and he's leaving. Good for you, Bob. You've earned it.
Okay. Are we good? You think?
More be at that meeting.
All right. I'm good.
Call the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, John.